Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Samaya Khalik, and I'm an immigration attorney. I'm very excited for you to join me on today's live discussion on L-1 visas, which are business visas, employment visas, and this one is a very special one because it's a visa that allows unique opportunities and one that I'm always very excited to work on. So what is an L-1 visa? An L-1 visa is an intercompany transferee visa for executives and managers and for those employees who have specialized knowledge or advanced level of knowledge. So there are two types of L-1 visas, L-1A for executives and managers and L-1B for employees with specialized knowledge or an advanced level of knowledge. And it's very important to keep in mind which one you're going to apply for because there are different distinctions and requirements that you have to meet to show that you fit into the one that you're applying for. So let's just go back to an L-1 visa for executives and managers. There is a difference between if you're applying as an executive or if you're applying as a manager. An executive is generally someone who has wide latitude at a company. They'll be making decisions without much oversight and supervision, and a lot of it involves policy making, strategy, looking at the broader direction of the organization or company. Whereas the manager has a more day-to-day function. They supervise the work of others. They'll be hiring others. And while they do have a high level of authority to make decisions, there is still somebody such as, let's say, an executive board that they must answer to. So the definitions of an executive and a manager are very, very important, and they do come into play when you're applying for your L-1 visa. So just keep in mind that if you're an executive or a manager who has been sent over to the United States in either one of those roles, that you remember which one is important for you to pick and appropriately describes your actual functions and duties that you will be performing in the United States. And then in regards to a L-1B, an employee having specialized knowledge or advanced level of knowledge, what does that mean? It means that not just any employee at a company is eligible for this. Someone who is a high-level employee, they've had tremendous experience and gained special knowledge about the company's services or products, or have a certain level of expertise that's really essential to the company, and they want to send that person over to the United States because the knowledge that person possesses is very essential to getting something done for the company. So again, just because it's not an executive or manager, somebody who has specialized knowledge is a higher level employee than, let's say, somebody who just started working at an entry level position. So that's also very important to remember. So now that we've gone over an executive, manager, and someone having specialized knowledge, let's talk about the visa itself and the eligibility requirements, the process, etc., and a lot more. So as I mentioned, the L-1 visa is designed for people who are working in a company outside of the United States the way to say it is in the 3 years preceding at the time of filing. So you must be working for that company in this 3-year period before whenever you are going to file. So it could be you currently working for them or having worked for them a year ago or 2 years ago, but you must have worked for them for one continuous year in that 3-year period in order to be eligible for the L-1 visa. So that's one of the top key requirements first that you must meet in order to apply for an L-1 visa. Second, whatever the position is that you have in the foreign company, you must be coming to the United States to either be performing at an executive level, a manager level, or as a specialized employee. So it must be one of those three positions. You can't be coming in as just a regular worker. It has to be one of those three. Additionally, you must remember that this is a non-immigrant visa, What does that mean? It means it's a temporary visa. So this is not a visa that's going to automatically lead to a green card. It's something that's going to temporarily allow you to come to the United States to get some project done. And there's a certain time period for which you can get this visa, and I'll go over that soon. But before I go over that, let's go over some of the other requirements that must be met for the L-1 visa. So we already went over the employment period requirement. You must be employed by the foreign company for at least one continuous year in the 3 years preceding whatever the time of filing of the L-1 visa. You have to demonstrate that the employment in the United States is going to be either in a managerial, executive, or specialized knowledge capacity. There has to be a physical office in the United States where you're going to work, and you'll be working at the U.S. office within the time period for which the L-1 visa is approved. If you are a company and you are using the L-1 visa to create a new office in the United States and you want to be sending over an executive or a manager or yourself in that position to do that, the physical premises requirement is really, really important and it must be met in order for the L-1 visa to be approved. So it's not just enough that you start a company. There has to be an actual physical office showing where the office will be located, where you will be working and the employees will be working. So that's very, very important as well. There are other requirements for the L-1 visa that have to be considered, both for the company outside of the United States and the company in the United States, whether it's a new office or an existing office. One of the important things that you have to show is that the company outside of the United States is doing business. What does that mean? It means the company outside the United States is entering into contracts, providing services. Basically, you're showing that it functions, it exists, and it's not just a company in name. That's really, really important because there are other requirements at play, such as the ability of the foreign company to help out the new company, if it's a new company or an existing company financially. Additionally, there has to be an existing relationship between the foreign company and the U.S. company. So if you just have a company outside of the United States in name, that will not be enough. You have to show that the company outside the United States is actually engaging in business, has clients, providing services, is earning some sort of income from whatever type of products they sell or services that they provide. Additionally, for the U.S. company, if it's an existing company, you have to show that they've been in business. They are conducting business. They've been in business for more than a year. There are contracts in place, their clients, etc., whatnot. If it's going to be a new office, then you have to show that at least a physical office has been procured and that the company in the U.S. has the ability to get business. And you can do that by showing projects that are already in place or prospective projects based on conversations you're having or contracts that are ready to be signed, etc. So that's very, very important. We have a question over here. Do you have to have the exact same position in the U.S. as you do in your overseas company? That's a very good question. No, you don't have to have the exact same position in the foreign company and in the U.S. company. So let's say you're an executive in the foreign company. You can come here as either an executive or a manager, but you have to explain why you're coming in that particular position, why that's necessary to fulfill the role that the U.S. company needs you to fulfill. Additionally, let's say you're more of a specialized employee outside of the United States, but they want to send you over here into the U.S. and let's say a managerial role. You have to demonstrate why they're sending you for that position and how you meet those qualifications. So if you don't have the exact same position overseas, you must demonstrate how you are qualified to meet the requirements of the position in the United States. So you're not locked into whatever position you have outside of the United States. We have another question. If it is a new company, is there a minimum amount a company has to invest to get an L-1 visa? So there isn't a specific amount that a foreign company has to invest into the United States. And when we talk about invest, we're really talking about the resources that a company is spending to set up a new office, right? So procuring physical premises, getting equipment, depending on the type of business that they have, hiring employees, etc. Really, the company just has to show that they're making enough money to fund all of this, to fund the setup of the new office, to pay the employees that they're going to hire, to pay the salary of the person that they're sending over to start the new office. And even when it's an existing office, financial ability is very important. So while there isn't a specific income or financial resources that a company has to have, they need to demonstrate that they do have enough financial ability to support the company in the United States and to pay the employee that they're going to send over into the United States. So it does come into play in that regard. So if you have a company outside of the United States that's not making a profit and that's barely making enough money to support setting up an office over here or running an office in the United States and also pay the salary of somebody here and manage the office outside of the United States, then there will be some challenges you will face with the L-1 petition. Okay, so to continue on, one of the things that I've been mentioning, but just to go into more detail, is the relationship between the foreign company and the U.S. company. There has to be a corporate relationship between these two companies. So you can't just have two different companies, one outside of the United States and another random company here in the United States, and transfer over an employee from that company to the one in the United States. It doesn't work like that. There has to be an existing relationship between the U.S. company and the foreign company. So either the foreign company could be the parent company and the U.S. company will be the subsidiary, or vice versa, or you can have a branch in the United States of a company that has headquarters elsewhere, or you can have a sister company and a parent company, or you can have affiliate companies owned by the same people by approximately the same percentage. And there are specific definitions that have to be met for each of these corporate relationships. We do have an article on our website, a blog post, that breaks down these different relationships and how a company can meet these relationships to qualify for the L-1 visa. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I recommend that you find that article on our website to get the breakdown of how a company can qualify for the corporate relationship that is necessary for an L-1 visa. Okay, so let's see what else. So, yes. So for the foreign company and the U.S. company, when you're applying for the L-1 visa, there is so much documentation that has to be submitted to prove to USCIS that the foreign company exists. That is something that's very, very critical. USCIS takes great pains and requires a lot of documentation to make sure that there is actually an existing company outside of the United States and that there is one existing in the United States. So what kind of documentation do you need to provide? You need to provide financial statements, tax returns, pay slips for showing that you are paying the employee that you're going to send over, any other employees that you have, evidence of doing business, contracts, purchase orders, client list. So you really have to put together a lot of documentation to meet the requirements for both the foreign office, showing that it exists, that it's doing business, that it has the financial ability to cover the expenses of both the foreign company and the U.S. company. Same thing for the U.S. company, that it exists, there are resources, etc. And then for the employee that you're going to send over to the United States, you have to prove that that person has actually been working for that company for at least 1 year. So what do you have to submit? Pay slips, tax returns, other documentation, contracts to show that they were actually employed for the foreign company. And you have to submit documentation to demonstrate that they are qualified for whatever position that they're going to take on in the United States, whether it's executive, managerial, or as a specialized knowledge employee. So every single element of the visa has to be demonstrated with evidence. It's not sufficient for you to just say this person is a specialized employee or this person will function in this role if you do not clearly outline every single element of the visa and how the company in the US, the company outside, and the employee meet all those requirements. Additionally, for a new office, if you're doing an L-1 visa for someone you're going to send over to start a new office, there's a higher scrutiny because it is a new office. So you have to provide even more documentation to establish that that actual office in the US will be successfully implemented, that there is financial ability to cover the expenses of all of that, and the person you're sending over is qualified to set up that office, and within a 5-year period they will be successful in achieving whatever objectives they've set out to achieve. So if you're doing a new office, it's really, really important that you put together a business plan. A business plan is a great way to articulate how the companies will meet all of the requirements, their goals and plans, and what they plan on doing in the United States and how they're going to achieve those objectives. And that business plan will also be helpful in renewing the visa. So we have another question over here, and I'll answer that in a second, but I just want to go back to addressing, yes, how long this visa is for. So if it's a new office and you're sending somebody over here to set up the new office, the L-1 visa will initially be given for 1 year. For executives and managers, they can extend that in 2-year increments up to a total of 7 years. For specialized knowledge employees, again, they'll be given 1 year. They can extend that as well for 2 years up to a maximum of 5 years. For existing companies in the United States that have been in existence for more than a year, you can get it for up to initial period of 3 years for both executives, managers, and specialized employees, and then extend by 2-year increments, and then have a total of 7 years for executives and managers and 5 years for specialized knowledge employees. So there is the possibility to extend this visa if you're meeting the requirements and you can demonstrate that you continue to meet the requirements, but there is a cap at which, there's a limit to how long you can get this visa for and extend it to. So that's important to keep in mind. So to address the question here, is it better to come in as an executive or manager? It really depends on the position, right? It really depends on the position and the objectives that you're set out here to do. If you're already in a managerial position outside of the United States, depending on the role that you're going to take on in the US, it may make more sense for you to come in as a manager. Sometimes if you're an executive outside the United States, maybe you want to come in as a manager when you're setting up a new office, because you'll be doing some hiring, you'll be engaging in the company on a more day-to-day basis with operations, which you may not do so much as an executive. And in contrast, let's say it's not a new office and you're functioning as an executive outside the United States. Maybe then it makes more sense to come in as an executive because some of the roles you'll be performing will make sense for you to perform at an executive level. So it really just depends on various factors, such as, is it an existing office? Is it a new office? What will your responsibilities be? What are the objectives of the position? And depending on that, you can decide if you want to come in here as an executive or a manager. And sometimes there's something called a functional manager. And a situation where it's a bit of a hybrid role. So you can argue it out where the role is hybrid and, what responsibilities overlap, etc. But really, it's very, very important to kind of clearly outline the role that you're going to take on. And depending on the exact responsibilities that you'll have or the objectives of the company, both overseas and here, your attorney can work with you to decide which is better for you to go about and pursue. And sometimes you can even argue both. So it just really, really depends on the individual petition. And it doesn't mean that if you choose one over the other, that you'll have a higher level of success. It really just depends on the individual person. So for one person, it might make more sense to choose one position over another. So really, it depends on the individual. Okay, so can the spouse of an L-1 visa holder work? Yes, one of the benefits of an L-1 visa is that if you get the visa, your spouse can also get something called an L-2 visa. And now there's a change where they don't have to apply for work authorization. When they get that visa, they'll get a special annotation and it'll allow them to enter the United States and work. So that's a really nice benefit to have as an L-1 visa holder and the spouse of an L-1 visa holder. So speaking of benefits, let's go over some of the benefits of an L-1 visa. As we mentioned earlier, an L-1 visa can be extended. So that's nice. Even though there's a limit to how long you can extend this for, it's still nice that you can extend the visa up to 7 years for executives and managers and for a maximum of 5 years for specialized knowledge employees. Additionally, you can get the visas for your dependents, your spouses, and children under the age of 21. And it is a dual intent visa, so you can apply for permanent residency. And, if you're a company outside of the United States and you're not an existing company in the US, it really is a unique opportunity for you to create a company in the United States without having to invest a substantial amount to qualify for the visa. As opposed to one of the investment visas that someone may be interested in pursuing. And sometimes there are people who are interested in an investment visa, such as like an E2 visa, but there are limitations on that visa. And in that case, an L1 visa is a great option for them. And the other thing that's really nice about the L1 visa is that there are no annual limits on this visa. So anyone can apply for this visa. We have another question. Hi, if the company overseas is not really doing business, can they still start a new office in the US and apply for the L1? So we kind of went over this earlier. If the company overseas is not doing business, they are going to have a very difficult time getting the L1 approved because the company outside must be doing business. That's really, really important, especially when it comes to starting a new office in the US, because one of the key questions USCIS is going to ask is, how does the company have the resources and the ability to set up the new office over here? So if the company outside has no income, how are they going to pay for a new office? How are they going to pay for supplies? Who's going to pay the salary of the employee? So that's something that you really want to keep in mind because it could be one of the reasons why USCIS does not approve the petition. And it is a requirement that the company outside is doing business. So if the company is not earning any money, you may want to make sure that the foreign company outside the United States is in a good position financially where they can demonstrate they have the financial ability to set up the new US office, pay the employee's salary that they're going to send over and cover any other expenses before you apply for the L1 visa. Okay, so we went over a lot of things. I'm kind of jumping all over the place because, some of this information kind of overlaps and it's not necessarily something I can present in the most systematic order because everything kind of overlaps. But the point is, if you have any questions, just send it along and hopefully I'm addressing your questions as they're coming up. So one of the other things that I want to talk about is an L1. Yes, it does have a limit to how long you can extend it for, but it is nice that it is a dual intent visa. And that's really great because a lot of people who are here on L1s, especially executives and managers, they have a pathway to a green card. So it's nice because once you've been here for a year or so, and depending on, what objectives are achieved in your role, etc., whatnot, executives and managers can qualify for the EB1 green card visa. So that's a great option for a green card. And specialized knowledge employees, let's say they come here as a specialized knowledge employee and over the next few years they get promoted and they get to the role where they become an executive or a manager, they in the future also have a pathway to a green card. Additionally, that's not the only way to get a green card. The company over here can sponsor them for a EB2 or a EB3 to get a green card as well. So there are options for people who are here on L1 visas to be eligible to get green cards through one of the employment visas. We have a question here. Could you use the same letters for the EB1 used in the O1? So this is kind of a little bit unrelated to an L1 visa, but depending on the EB1 and what you're applying for, the EB1 has a higher standard than an O1, and depending on the arguments that you make, they will have to be altered to meet the requirements for the EB1. So we'll just say that. If you are someone who's on an L1 visa and you previously held, let's say, speaking of O1 visas, an O1 visa or some other kind of temporary visa, keep in mind that each visa has different requirements. There are some things in your background that you can reuse for certain types of visas, but generally, depending on the type of visas, there are different requirements that must be met. So that raises another question. Let's say that you want to apply for an L1 and you're not eligible for it. What are your options? Well, someone asked about an O1, and O1 can be an option for you. That's another visa for you to pursue if you have extraordinary ability in your field. And if you're coming here as a specialized knowledge employee or an executive or a manager, there is a possibility that some of your background overlaps with the requirements for that kind of visa and you may qualify. Depending on the background, the company that you're working for, sometimes it makes more sense to apply for L1 visa as opposed to another kind of visa. And other times it's the reverse. So it really just depends on your individual academic and work experience, the company you're working for, the company that wants to hire you. So these are all factors that you have to keep in mind when you're applying for the visa. But the L1 specifically is really a nice opportunity and a nice visa that's created for companies who have offices both outside the United States and in the US, or want to create one in the US and just make it an easier process for them. And then if the company here in the US grows or is at a level where they have more than 50 employees, there's something called a blanket L1 petition where they can apply for multiple employees to bring over to the US office in a much smoother process. And you can contact me directly to learn more about L1 blanket petitions. So I think we went over a lot of the basics of the L1 visa, right? Who is an executive, who's a manager, specialized employee. These are three distinct positions. The key requirement, you must have worked for the foreign company for at least one continuous year in the 3-year period, the time of filing for the L1 visa. There has to be a physical office in the US for the US office. The foreign company must have financial ability. The U.S. company must also demonstrate that it has potential to create business, or is in existence, depending on whether it's an existing company or a new company, and the person that they're sending over is qualified for both the position that they will have in the United States and the current position that they have. So their eligibility requirements. So I think these are the key things. Are there any other questions that anybody has right now? Okay, so we got a couple other questions from people, and let me just see what they are and I'll address them. Can an L1 visa be transferred to another company? So no, an L1 visa cannot be transferred to another company. If it's a company that has no relationship with the foreign company and the US company, you cannot transfer over. Let's say it's a different office that's under the same company, then yes, you can go to another location of the same company within the United States. But if it's a completely different company, you cannot, because the L1 is specific to the company that you're working for. That's why those corporate relationships are very, very important. What is the normal L1 visa processing time? So an L1 visa can take up to a few months to be processed. It really just depends. We've had delays due to COVID. Sometimes USCIS speeds up. Sometimes they take longer. For most people who are applying for L1s, people usually do premium processing. And the reason for that is that companies are in need of the employee to start right away. They don't want to waste time. And premium processing is a really great option that's only available for employment visas. And what is it? So premium processing is when the company pays an additional fee. Depending on the type of visa, for L1, it's an additional $2,500. That's the current fee. It could change to get a decision in 15 days. So if you're a company, that's really a great option that I highly recommend. if you need an employee to start right away, because you will get the decision in 15 days. And let's say the company, USCIS wants the company to send in more evidence. They will give you an RFE, if not a final decision, within that 15-day period, and then you will have additional time to respond. It could be a few months to respond. And once you send in your response to that RFE, they have to give you the decision again within a 15-day period. So it's really a nice option that speeds up the whole process. And for a company that needs somebody to start right away and cannot wait, it's a great option to pursue. If you don't file for premium processing at the time that you submit the L-1 visa application, you can always submit the premium processing later. And as soon as USCIS receives it, they will make that decision within 15 days. So, don't worry if you don't submit it with the initial application. You have that option later. Is L1 a dual intent visa? So I kind of went over this briefly earlier. L1 is a dual intent visa. What does that mean? There are some visas where if you're here in the United States, you have to show an intent to go back, and you cannot pursue another type of visa that allows you to gain permanent residency over here. For an L1, that's not the case. You don't have to show that you're going to go back. You can be eligible for a green card-based visa. You can pursue other visas. So that's really, really nice. All right, let's see if there's anything else. I think that's the gist of it. So I want to just sum up by saying that an L1 is a really great temporary employment visa. It's a great option, especially for entrepreneurs and people who are outside of the United States. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so this is what I want to say. There are a lot of companies, there are a lot of people who have foreign companies outside of the United States, or entrepreneurs who are interested in creating U.S. companies, and they think the route to pursue is a E2 visa. But depending on the country that they're from and the reciprocity period, it's really not a good idea for them to pursue a E2 visa, or it doesn't give them much options. In that kind of situation, an L1 visa is a great alternative because you can get it for a much longer time period. There are different requirements that have to be met, even though there is substantial documentation that needs to be submitted. It's not as strict as some of the investment visas are. So depending on what country you're from, you may want to look at the L1 visa as an alternative to a E2 visa or even an EB5 visa if that's what you're considering. And it might give you the options that you're looking for and flexibility that the other visas will not give you. Another thing to keep in mind is an L1 is great if you have people outside of the United States working for your company that you want to bring over. Instead of doing individualized visas for them based on their specific background and qualifications, you can just do an L1 visa. And if you have a significantly large company, you can do blanket L1 visas, which makes the process so much faster and expedient. So that's an important consideration to keep in mind. And sometimes there are people who will qualify for O1 visas, but depending on the company that's hiring you, if it's the same company and there's a corporate relationship, it could be easier to get the L1 visa if, let's say, you don't necessarily meet all the O1 visa requirements right away. So what I'm trying to stress over here is that it's very important to know about the different types of temporary employment visas that are available to you, because some of them might provide you with better opportunities that meet your needs and the needs of the company. And unless you know about the type of visas that exist, you may not be able to make the best decision for your circumstances. So, and that goes the other way around. Maybe the L1 is not the best visa for you, and there's another one that would be faster or that you qualify for in a stronger way. And in that case, I highly, highly recommend that you consult with an immigration attorney who can review your background, your education qualifications, employment qualifications, look at the company that you're working for, the objectives of the U.S. company that you want to work for, and they'll help you and the company come up with the best visa option to pursue. All right. So with that said, do we have any more questions? All right, so if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to end the discussion over here. We have quite a few blog posts and articles on our website discussing L-1 visas. If you would like me to take a look at your background, your company's background, and go over your eligibility for starting a company in the United States or transferring over an employee here for an existing branch of your foreign company, please reach out to me and I would be happy to help you with your L-1 visa. And if you'd like to learn about any of our other types of services and other types of visas that we help with, we have all this information available on our website. I highly recommend that you take a moment to review our blog posts and articles because they may answer a lot of the questions that you have. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you on my next live discussion. If there's a particular subject you'd like me to address, please send us a message or reach out to us, and I'll try to address it in the future. Take care and have a great night.